Hello, thank you for joining us again on this edition of COG Connect, now on your screen. Now, on this edition, we're going to be bringing to you a series of issues that affect our nation. And of course, as in this program, we try to learn from those issues on how you can manage your business. So first, we'll be talking about issue of certificate forgery. Now, we know how this has more or less become a pandemic in our country today, whether in the private or public sector. We'll also be talking about the issue of inconclusive election. We are seeing what is happening in Edo State, the challenges that is being faced by the system in terms of who becomes the candidate, the card-carrying candidate for each of these parties in the forthcoming election in Edo State. Now, all these and more are what we are bringing to you, and be rest assured, there are a lot of lessons that you can learn in each of these topical issues that we're going to be having a conversation around them. And so stay tuned, invite your friends, share the video, and let's get it started. Welcome back. We are going live into the issues of today, and there is no other person that will do justice to these matters and give you the opportunity to learn some lessons, that you can use than the person of the GMD, G Consulting International Services, Mr. Godfrey Dyson.
Yes, of course. What we talk about here, we basically talk with CEOs and entrepreneurs and enterprises. And the way I want to see the public space is that probably we have been dealing more with the CEOs at the private sector.
Yeah.
Now, I want us to take a look at the CEOs at the public sector. The CEO talking about Mr. President of the nation being our CEO, the governors being the CEOs at the states, the local government chairman, and of course all other.
The MD is, in terms of
they are CEOs.
They are CEOs as well.
Yeah. So essentially, I feel that there's a recruitment
gap
issues. Okay, so today I would like us to talk about the recruitment issues with the political office. Okay, so we'll just talk generally because again, when you talk about the macroeconomy, you're talking about both the private sector and the public sector. Yes. So if the private sector has gotten it right by way of the banking system, then we need to talk with the public sector now with a view of them getting it right. Something happened. Wigwe died.
Yes.
The group CEO at Access Holdings. 3 days later, a new CEO arrives. So that's the kind of things I want us to talk about. What are these issues that is making us have a rethink? Because again, we always ask the question, the issue, is it with leadership or with followership? So I don't know what you feel.
Yeah, for me, I think it is both ways. It's a two-way street. But of course, there is a saying that uneasy lies the head that bears the crown. And the implication of that statement is the fact that it is who bears the crown that have the highest responsibility in shaping the direction of the people. All right. So for me, I think the leadership have the highest responsibility, but of course the followership as well have some responsibility that they need to show them.
So I mean, I agree with your line of thought because today these same people, if they find themselves under the tutelage of good leadership, they follow. Okay, so I believe if we get our recruitment processes right, I think that half of our problem may be solved.
Definitely.
So today we'll be looking at the Nigerian public sector recruitment process, the issues and the solutions. I know we as COG Consulting, we don't just look at what the issues are. We provide alternative solutions and what is going to be, what we are also going to be able to do to solve
the problems.
The problem. So maybe we'll start with the delegate, what I regard to as a delegate wahala.
yeah, because again, flashback to 2023, when we're having the presidential election, it became very obvious that there is something that is known as the delegate economy. Because we saw firsthand, how the process was being maneuvered. We saw firsthand how delegates, some group of people that are known as delegates, became so powerful that they decided what eventually happened today.
Something interesting happened, during that era. They called the small boy. I said, okay, what do you want to be in future?
He wants to be a delegate.
So that's to tell you about the height of the delegates of issues. So some politicians at the grassroots especially wait deliberately to the time where they get selected or elected as delegates. From there they make it big, and they have the kill at that time. I mean, fast forward now to Edo governorship election. Okay, so now the political party is after election, after their primary, produce three candidates. So how do you speak to that?
it is amazing because it kind of exposes the whole process. It compromises the whole process. A situation where a party ought to, party politics is supposed to be a model that organizations should even learn from. Because if you look at, we copied the American system of democracy.
Okay.
And if you look at the way the party process is run,
seamless.
They adopt the best technology, they adopt the best management principles, they adopt the best marketing practices. But here, it boils down, everything is just
modeled up
into how much you can offer or how much interest you can show, in trying to, and they have introduced the word capture, in trying to capture that ticket or that state.
Yeah, so for me, essentially, I believe these are issues. They look so small, but they are the ones that determine the overall facet of what we see.
Definitely.
And that's why we're seeing them as issues today that we need to address. Sometimes we need to bring in the private sector approach to some of these things. So once we get them right, at the end of the day, we'll get the big picture right. So today, the INEC is the one that does election. The recognized body that does election. Okay? And they need to perfect all art of electionary process from the delegates to the final elections. Okay? So that once that is gotten right, it's just a template that they have created. Once that template is created, it's just for you to plug and play. So if you want to do an election anywhere in the world, anywhere in the country, you look at what does the INEC model.
What are INEC templates?
Yeah.
Stipulates.
So let's look at a good example, the NBA. So today, the NBA for a long period of time now have adopted the electronic
voting system.
So you do your campaign, and at the comfort, the lawyer sits at the comfort of their room, and they just vote for who they want to vote for. And in the last 10 years, we see that the NBA election has been very seamless. Okay? So if we take this to the voting pattern in the National Assembly, because one of the things that we need to be held accountable for is we need to know what you are voting for. Okay? Who you are voting for and what you are voting for. So today, if you go to the US that you mentioned, okay, if there's going to be an abortion bill, we must know each of the senators
and how they
voted for or against. So INEC must of a necessity develop now a template so that when any voting, even in your village meeting, they want to do a voting, they will ask you, look, let us adopt the INEC model. The cooperative models talk about one man, one vote. Abi, one woman, one vote. So we should be able to refer to say, okay, how will INEC have done it in this scenario?
Yes.
So the voting template needs to be developed by INEC and deployed by everybody. So if you go to maybe the House of Representatives or the House of Assembly or the Senate, and they want to vote for a particular state, we should know what each person is voting for. And at the end of the day, we should be able to produce a data to say this is how the voting went. Okay? So similarly, at the delegate level, by the time they want to vote, we should know who voted and who they are voting for.
Yes.
So that at the end of the day, we know who
to hold responsible.
Who to hold responsible.
You know, for me, it is an issue of the political will. Because if you look at the position of INEC now, like you pointed out, they are the ombudsman, so to speak, that is supposed to shepherd the electionary process. Yeah. You know, and by that, they will model the best practices across, you know, whether it is national election, state election, or local government election, and it will dovetail,
or even party primaries.
And it will even party primaries, yeah. And it will dovetail even into community elections. You understand?
Yes.
Because people will now begin to now say, this is the way it is done. But if you look at what happened, you know, before coming onto the studio, you were talking about the beavers.
Yes.
All right?
Yeah.
Now, the beavers, I should say, was a system that should have been able to give Nigeria and Nigerians.
They were hopeful.
Yes.
They were happy that, look, finally we found that.
Finally, we are moving.
The INEC by themselves now found a way out to say, look, we're not we're not mandated to use the beavers. So I think now, going forward, that should be in the Constitution. To say it's now mandatory. Okay?
That they should use beavers.
Beavers. Because it can track and it can record whatever transpire at the end of the day. So it will save us all this headache, you know, legitimacy and issues like that. So what we are saying today with Delegate Wahala, INEC should have a template. Okay? They should have a voting template that should cut across from party primaries even
to general elections.
So that we know that that is a standard. Today, there is a debate to say whether it's going to be direct primary or indirect primaries. So, and the party now chooses the one that will suit them at that particular point in time. I think there should be standard. So, I'm worried that from the National Assembly, okay, they should adopt an electronic voting pattern right now. And at the end of every voting, they should be able to give us the back end of who voted and what they voted for. And that should come straight to even the party primaries. Okay? So, I mean, like Governor Erufai, when he was governor of Kaduna State, I mean, he went to China, sat with them, and they developed and gave him a voting machine. So, and that's why you saw then that with Erufai, when he did the local government election, his party lost some local government.
And the next election, they dumped the machine.
So from party, even to diaspora voting, because people are now clamoring that there should be diaspora voting, which of course for a sane society.
It is crucial because the diaspora community seems to also contribute so much in terms of foreign direct, forex and even investment.
Yes, the volume of transactions that they bring into this. So they should be able to determine who
becomes leaders.
That. So, and there's no way, I mean, you're doing diaspora voting today, that it doesn't have to be electronics.
No, not at all.
The embassies are there.
Yes.
Okay, so you connect with the embassies and the people go. In America today, vote starts even before the election day.
Definitely.
Okay?
Sometimes a month, 2 months before
so
the election day.
You can make your vote and post it. Okay? So even though American in real sense is not even doing electronic voting, but I think when it came to COVID-19, it came to some other issues, Nigeria was able to take the lead. So in the world today, based on our peculiarities, we should take the lead when it comes to electronic voting. And INEC should be the one to champion that. If you have that, the delegates at the end of the day should be made to, vote electronically to be able to determine who their party leader is. Because don't forget that that's where the issues start from. If today you get a governor that is imposed on the people, then you'll be sure that the system is already manipulated.
Yeah.
And what that happens is that compromise already
has taken place.
Started.
And it continues to grow from there.
Yeah.
So it's a pertinent issue for us and for that conversation to continue, because right now INEC is not even speaking, in terms of which way forward, in terms of how they are going to conduct, the next general election, because of course politicians have started planning for the next general election. All right,
Yeah.
they are even looking beyond Edo State right now to who becomes the next president.
Yeah, because you can see they have already started making public statement how
Of course.
2017 is going to.
Yes.
2027
2027.
is going
Yes.
to be. It's going to be like.
Yes.
So INEC should come up again. Is once you are able to conduct a credible election that everybody is happy with, and the right candidates come, they win the elections. You will be better off for the
country will be better off. The country will be better off.
So
And
that's talking about the issue of delegates, Wahala. Then we'll now move on to, we're looking at issues, the recruitment process that we have, and the issues that be
associated
Yes.
to
So
this recruitment
one of them
process.
is delegate, Wahala. The next one I think we should look at is the issue of certificate forgery. Okay, so today you want to get into a top bank
yeah,
in Nigeria or across the world. There are recruitment processes
exactly.
that will not allow you to come up with a forged certificate. So that's what we're talking about. Okay, certificate forgery is still a major headache today. So I don't know what you think the issues are as far as certificate forgery, because I believe that if you can forge a certificate, it means that you can steal money.
Yeah, it has become, but again, certificate forgery has been with us for a very long time. It just kept on, showing
It's ugly head.
ugly head from time to time, But again, the major issue is about the moral culture that we have come to build over time, whereby people are no longer very, mindful of what they do. All that they are after is, okay, how do I achieve my goals? How do I achieve my objectives, irrespective of, whatever process.
So could it be that these political positions are too juicy?
I tell you, it has. That is the culture. That is part of the culture that we have built over time now. Because we're saying something the other day. You pointed out now, a boy was asked after the general election. After the party primaries of last general election, what do you want to become? He said, "I want to become a delegate," because he saw firsthand how somebody that was nobody as at 24 hours back became somebody after 24 hours.
Okay. So, and it also leads to the fact that the bars, the educational qualifications are probably too low.
But again,
because if you want to become an MD of a top conglomerate in Nigeria, one, you need to have the experience. Two, you need to have a minimum of, say, master degree holder. You need to have a minimum of, say, master degrees. Okay, or probably even first degree.
Yeah.
Okay, from a good institution.
Exactly.
Okay, so but today we're saying that okay, you want to be president, a WAEC will just be sufficient. Okay, and we're now saying that okay, even that without WAEC, okay, maybe you have 2 credits or 3 credits. So how would that fit in?
Truthfully speaking, I don't think the issue has to do with the level of requirement that is being demanded or required. That in itself ought to motivate people to tender
the genuine documents.
Genuine documents. Because for whatever it is, if you want to represent a people, at least even the O level that they're talking about, you should be able to get that.
Okay.
Right?
Genuinely. Okay.
Get it genuinely. Because in the wisdom of the people that crafted the Constitution, I think because they are looking at the fact that, for instance, somebody from Cairo Namuda or somebody from Ukwani local government, where I come from, all right, might want to be the president of Nigeria. And the person has been a rural person, but he knows that he has something to offer. So when you put the bar a bit high, maybe that could displace such a person. So to make it accessible to everybody that believes that they have something to offer, make it a bit.
So are you now marry that with maybe a top bank or a top conglomerate? Will a top conglomerate now say, look, because we feel that somebody at the rural area has something to offer, let us bring down the bar, knowing that you're going to be competing with global players across the world.
Yes. You know, the truth of the matter now is that the trajectory of recruitment today is de-emphasizing the type of certificate
that you have.
They are focusing now more.
Even as low as the certificate is, people still go ahead to.
That is the problem.
To go and forge
the certificate.
So let's now look at how we can solve this problem.
Yes.
Because recently, by the reason of what we do, one of the things Central Bank did recently was to say, look, for you to register any of those institutions that it regulates, microfinance bank, other institutions, you have to do it electronically.
Exactly.
Okay, so you get into the portal, put the name you want to use. Okay, so once you put the name you want to use, you put your CSC registration, then you put your payment, then they will send you a code. So that code will now enable you to continue with the process.
Exactly.
Okay, so your shareholders, their qualifications and all these things will now be uploaded into the platform. So as you begin to upload, when you get to a point you don't have the next qualification,
you'll be hanged. You cannot be allowed to progress to the next level.
To progress. So I think a system like that should be brought into a political environment. What does that mean? Once the delegates they follow the INEC template, whether it's primary or direct or indirect primary, once you have selected who the candidate is, then you submit that to INEC. Okay? Once you submit that to INEC, INEC will now send a code to the candidate that the party have selected to say, okay, go ahead, go and upload your credentials and your informations. Okay? So, for example, now, if you want to gain admission into a Nigerian university, for example, now, so at the point of registration, you will put in your, because the portal is linked up to WAEC portal. So the moment you start your registration, your result will be verified automatically. So to avoid scenario of certificate forgery, I think we should bring that to here, because already in the private sector,
it has been achieved.
It's already been achieved. So I don't know why somebody will still these days.
Action.
Yeah. So in the private sector, this process to a large extent has been achieved, and that is something that we are hoping that CEOs that are watching us will try to learn from, especially the banks. Like you are giving examples with, the banks have really automated their processes. And so if you're a small business today, one thing you must begin to learn is to automate your process, not just the recruitment process, but other aspects of your business, so that we can begin to demand from the public sector, from INEC, to mandate, its relevant departments and the political parties to automate their processes, so that this certificate forgery thing can, become a thing of the past.
Can be laid to rest.
Yes, can be laid to rest. So that we cannot begin to face inconclusive elections, because the problems are many.
Yeah.
So if we use automation to at least tackle the issue of delegate wahala and the certificate forgery, they will not know that inconclusive election is the next matter.
Yeah.
So what is your idea of this, resolving this inconclusive election that has started from INEC and has now moved to political parties?
So which is worrisome.
Yes.
Because again, the country or indeed enterprise, they rule by budgets.
Yes.
Okay, so INEC has budgets for every election that they conduct. Similarly, organizations have budgets.
Yes.
So when you hear things like inconclusive election, it's a non-budgetary
election.
it's a non-budgetary item. It was not
Yeah, it's not captured in the budget for that period.
Okay, so but now you have quite a number of it. Okay, as a result of lacunas again in our constitution.
In our process.
So you hear something as like during the course of election, if there is a disruption somewhere, INEC will not recognize that the voting around those areas. So national inconclusive election became at the height of the matter. When the council elections is on location, it gets reasonable to a certain number, and at the end of the day. And like you mentioned, the worrisome part now is that the parties at their primary, they are having inconclusive elections. That's quite
party primaries.
That's quite fearful. So it's a major issue that we need to look at with a view to see how we can deal with it. Okay, so we look at basically what's the cause of it. It has to also come back to the desperation of our politicians. Okay, so you see people now that are supposed to be ordinarily be in the private sector, they want to be in the public sector because of the juicy nature of the offices. And they will go as far as disrupting elections and making them to become inconclusive. So I think we need to find a common solution to this with a view of putting a permanent end to that. I mean, if an NBA conducts an election, for example, you can never hear that election is inconclusive because it boils down to the fact that template that we talked about originally, it should be brought to bear. So INEC will tell you that, look, anything about political primary, we are just to observe. The court will tell you that the primary elections of the political party is internal to them. But that is where the people that will govern us, the CEOs, the public CEOs, this is where they are being gotten from. So it's a major headache, and I think we should look at it to see a view of how we can
plug this situation. But I want to believe too that perhaps this automation process can help, because if the process is automated, I recall even the NBA had similar challenges of inconclusive election before they introduced the automation process. All right. So if that is done, perhaps it can handle that issue. But my major concern is what you said earlier on, which is the desperation
of the people,
of our politicians. Because for whatever it is, sir, what the major problem I have come to observe from our processes, sometimes it's not that our laws are not sufficient.
Okay.
But it's not that our processes are not sufficient, but the people that are operating these processes, for instance, we talked about the beavers.
Okay.
What stopped the INEC chairman from insisting? You are the one that introduced
the beavers. And you assured us.
Nobody forced it on you. You came with the technology, introduced it to us, and we paid for it.
And you're not telling us that it's not.
And at the end of the day, you did not use it. And your only excuse is that it was not mandated by law
for it to be used.
So
what we are saying today, for us to recruit the CEOs, there's a need for us to have a template that we use all the time. Whether it's going to be at the National Assembly voting system, whether it's going to be at the delegate voting system, there should be a template, and the INEC should be the one who puts that template in place. And it gets to a point where, INEC will become so popular to say, look, you want to carry out any vote, they say, let us use INEC
model. Yes.
Okay, so, and everybody will key in. So that's where INEC needs to get into.
Just like now, sir, INEC is popular. But the popularity is that when you talk about INEC, you talk about inconclusive election. So anytime you are doing an inconclusive election, the person will tell you, are you INEC? So but what you are championing this day is that the reverse should be the case.
Yeah, on a positive
Yes, on a positive note.
That takes me to the last part of our discussion. Essentially, we're looking at how to choose our CEOs.
Yes.
We've talked about the delegates, how to choose the delegates. We talked about how to get the governors, how to get our representatives, the senators.
Yes.
And we've talked about
so
the one I would like us to talk on the final note is the selection of the ministers. Even though
they are CEOs as well.
Yeah, they are CEOs. Even though 60 members of the Senate came and said, look, let us change from presidential to Republican system of governance. That would be a discussion for another day. But in the selection of the CEOs that are ministers. So for me, the law says that there has to be a minister from each state. So essentially, that means there must be 36 ministers
plus one.
Plus one. Okay, that makes 17. So how do we recruit these 37 persons? So for me, I am thinking that what should be done for inclusivity, the party, the governor of the state, whether it's in PDP or whether it's in whatever party, should select somebody from the state. Then the party itself, through its chairman, should select another person. Okay? Then the presidency that won the election should select. That means 3 persons per state. From one state. Times 37 gives you 111. So once you have that pool, then the next thing to do is to hand them over to an international recruitment agency. Give me 1 candidate from each state. They have to.
So that means the 3 from each state will pass through an interview session.
Okay. So now you've been able to fulfill your righteousness. You've gotten the governor to make his nomination. You've gotten the party to make his nomination. You yourself have made the nomination. Okay, so you declare the vacancies. So say, okay, I need ministers in petroleum, I need ministers in transport, I need ministers in agri.
So you can eventually tie each state to a particular portfolio.
It may not necessarily be that. All you are looking for 37 candidates, and it has to be 1 per state, and you have 111.
Yeah, but the point now is that for that interview to also be a bit more robust, the consulting firm needs to also understand what portfolio they interviewing this person.
That's where we need somebody in transport, we need somebody in agri, we need somebody in health, we need somebody. So those are the portfolios already given to them. So when you are nominating, you nominate based on that. Okay? So at the end of the day, give us 37 candidates that will cut across.
I'll fill these vacant positions.
So if I become the international recruitment agency, the first thing I would do is for them to go for a written exam.
You will see that.
So once you go for written exam, 1 person will be taken out. Okay, out of the 3 presented from each state, the least scored person will be taken out. So you have 2 remaining. So those 2 will now come for verbal
oral interaction.
So by the time they present that oral interaction, then 1 person will be taken out. So the 37 people you want are now available for you to send to Senate for them to look at them. Then you appoint. So it takes the headache. So now nobody will complain that you didn't take my candidate. So you are already now presenting is the best 37. Okay? Best 37 that will go and do the work. So for me, if we're able to do all these recruitment processes, I believe, because I'm trying to see the government thinking like private sector now, so that we can get the best. Okay? A bank will never, take you based on the fact that you are this or that. I was listening to one of the former CEOs at Stanbic IBTC, and he said, look, even though I made recommendation, by the time that person passed through the recruitment process, it became the best because they prepared the person at the end of the day. So if you're not having people go into politics, the best people will be the one going into politics now because they know that the process is transparent enough and is robust enough to be able to accommodate.
Exactly.
And those are the innovations. You wrote a book on innovation, okay? So those are the innovations we must bring to bear so that it should not be charlatans that we go and occupy our political space.
Leading positions.
So, and at the end of the day, little issues, because the place we find ourselves today as an enterprise. I'm talking about this government. It's an enterprise that are managing. It should be sleepless night for the 37 ministers, the president, and every other person until we get this problem sorted out. If we have to be 8 to 5, we can't solve the problem.
No.
And it has to be everybody on board. so that if you are proposing a policy, the agri person should be able to tell you the implication it will have. The transport person will tell you the implication. So it's going to be a sleepless night for us to be able, once we get the right people on board, they will now look at the issues that we're having with a view to see how we can sort out these issues. And at the end of the day, we'll have a good system that everybody will be part of.
That can be result oriented. I think as we wrap up, one of the key things that you help us to address going forward is how do we monitor or measure, these these ministers' performances. How do we monitor them? Because one thing I've come to also realize is that the recruitment process that you have put out there is wonderful, but at where we are now, what can we make out of it?
Yeah.
Because the current ministers have been appointed. So while we are anticipating that the next time the president will have opportunity to appoint ministers, he should be able to look into adopting this process of engaging an international recruitment agency to pass this nominated ministers through a recruitment process that will give us the best. Now,
performance.
How do we
make
sure?
There are templates already. There's something called PMS,
yes.
Performance Management System.
Yes.
And it has to do with what is called KPI, Key Performance Indicators.
Exactly.
Okay, so in those days, people like Awolowo, they had all the KPIs. So once you are appointed as a minister or as a commissioner, they give you your key performance indicators. So if you're going to, bring so metric tons of maize into the system, so you give us the strategy. This is how you're going to be able to do it. So at the end of the day, it's very simple in and out. Okay, so you said by the end of 1 year, you're going to double our production or productivity.
Yes.
Right now, maybe let's use paddy for example. Paddy now, let's say we're able to do 1 million metric tons. So at the end of 1 year, you are telling us you'll be able to do 2 million metric tons. So by the end of the year, we measure you to know, okay, we had 1 million metric tons, and you're able to get 1.5. That means you have 50% performance. Okay, so is that enough to keep you in that position?
Okay.
So similarly, today, let's talk about the transport system. When government came in, they mentioned CNG buses. Today, we need a robust transportation network in the capitals of our states. Lagos, Abuja, Kano,
Kaduna.
And at the end of the day, if we're able to achieve that, everybody will be better for that. So if you mention during campaign that, look, or you are appointed as a minister, and you promise that, look, I'm going to inject about 100 buses by this year. By the end of the year, we will check how many of those buses that are working. Okay, so we can score you based on that. So it's to just adopt the PMS, which is the performance management system. Look at the key performance indicator. So every person should be able to have a score at the end of the day to determine whether you are
qualified or fit to remain in that position. So we'll deal more on this in our next edition. And I want to challenge you to begin to think about performance management
system PMS.
Until the next edition, share this video and let others enjoy what you're enjoying. See you then.
Thank you. Have a nice day.